Hey guys, XRMeric here, and today we're going to be talking about how to build the deck. So I think it's going to be pretty important as people kind of get into the game with TCG Player and Clash and some bigger tournaments coming around. I think people are going to want to learn how to properly build a deck. So let's get into it. First of all, we're going to start off with step one. What am I building? So just really focus on what do you want to build? What are you looking at doing? What do you enjoy? Right. So, what style of deck do you want to build? Do you want to build an aggro deck, a mid-range deck, a control deck? Um, those basically just refer to how the deck plays, right? If you want to focus more so on attacking just consistently, go with an aggro deck. If you want to go with a more slower style that is focused on keeping out card advantage and just slowly going through the game. Not as fast as an aggro deck, but not as slow as a control deck. Then mid range might be your style. And a control deck is very, very slow, kind of wins through stopping your opponent, making sure that they have nothing they can do, and then kind of just taking the game from there when they've got nothing left that they can do. And then even slower than that is stall, which is just trying to completely stop your opponent. Um, but that kind of falls in with control. So think about what kind of those decks do you like to play? And then next is what do you want to go in this deck, right? Are you focused on maybe building like a thunder deck, right? Or are you do you want to specifically just get out Volt Tempest? Or do you want to play something more like Scraps? If you don't know what that is, that's like an artifact list that plays a bunch of different kind of good stuff guys. Or Fives, which is another deck where you're just normal summoning higher attack guys. That way you can get through the combat step and always have something to do. Or are you focused on an archetype? Are you focused on Rock and a Hard Place, trying to get out Kerberos and Draking? So looking at those kind of decks that exist um, can be a really good starting point and learning what you want to do. Um, and then once you go from there, if you go, oh, I want to build some sort of Thunder aggro list, there's a lot of ideas there, and then you can kind of go from there. And if you're ever confused or if you don't know what to look for, you can always go to Lester's Play Network. I have the little logo down there. But that website is where you do all the tournament stuff. If you're going to apply for tournaments, is also where an online deck builder is. Um, so if you ever need to build a deck online, you can always do it from there. Um, but most importantly, since all of the tournaments are held through that kind of website and that system, they have the ability to release the deck lists after the big premier tournaments have ended. So if you go to any of the premier tournaments that have happened, you'll be able to look at the deck list for everyone who's in that tournament, especially the top eight. And you can always look at them and try and find some ideas on what people are playing. Additionally, you can also go to Twitter, which the Elestrals page always posts topic lists and everything. So you can get a lot of good ideas and try and look at how they build their decks from there. Um, Next, we've got what am I including? What am I putting in the deck? So now that we've got some kind of good idea of what we want to play, what are we adding? You know, so what are the core cards? What makes your deck work, right? If you're looking at some sort of, let's say, Volt Tempest. Volt Tempest is one of the main decks that I play, so I know the cards that go in it, right? Volt Tempest is a thunder wind monster. You're looking to get that guy out. So obviously you gotta include Volt Tempest. That makes sense. Um, You can decide on whether you want to play Griffuse or not. Some people do, some people don't, but he's another card to consider. And then what's in Thunder? Okay, well you've got Astrabbit, you've got Elichick, you've got Jolton. You've got a lot of good Thunder creatures that you can look at and try and say, okay, which ones of these do I want to include? Or, since Full Tempest is wind and thunder, or thunder and wind, I should say, what wind cards can I throw in there? Do I want to play wind thunder variant? Um, so just kind of looking at which of these guys are good enough to go in my deck, and what makes that deck work. What else should I have? Staples. If you know what a staple is, it's a card that can be included in pretty much any deck, and usually is. So if we look down here, we've got the basically the staples from the top decks from the last digital app tournament. This is from the Top Cut. This was just a few days ago. They do these on their Twitter for every Premier tournament. This is just from the most recent one I could find. And as you can see, in all of the topping decks, there was certain cards that were included, like minimum in the deck, right? So every single deck in top 8 had Ambrosia Gorgons in them. There was only one deck that didn't have an Astrabbit, an Elichick, or an Altar, or a Shield. So all of those cards, Poison Tip Arrow as well, Earthquake, all of those cards are cards you should consider. The only ones in those that you might not consider are cards like Echolinks and Viscerus, which are a little bit more specific, unless you're playing Earth. And then Astrabbit and Elichick just kind of depends on, are you able to put Thunder in your deck at all? Usually is just kind of how that makes sense, because Astrabbit is a really good resource engine, and Elichick is good if you need a Divine in your deck. Altar of Stars as well is good if you have a way to, or if you have a reason to Nexus cards around. Very good card there. Moving on, how much do I add? Now that you've got the cards that you need to add to your deck, how much do you add, right? So if you've got a whole bunch of, let's say you've got like 50 cards that you want to add, right? Maybe not 50 cards, but a bunch of cards that you want to add. Where do you go from there, right? So the typical ratio, right, for how many Elestrals you want and how many runes you want is 19 Elestrals, 21 runes. That's pretty much the standard. That can vary if you do, 1822 or 1723 or 2020. Those all make sense, but 1921, if you look at all of the top decks, is pretty much what they're all on, roughly. So that's kind of what you're looking at there. So when you start including Elestrals into your deck, keep that in mind. That way you're not adding too many, and you start your match and you've got a bunch of Elestrals in your hand. So keep that in mind. And then Spirit Math. Spirit Math is really, really important. I tend to think about just how much I will relatively need, because you're not going to be seeing all of the cards that use all of the spirits, right? So let's say I include 3 Astrabbit in my deck, right? And that's the only Thunder card that I put in there. I may put 2 Thunder Spirits in my Spirit deck, not 3, because I'm not going to see all 3 Astrabbits in there. Right. Same thing with Earthquake. Earthquake is currently limited, so you can only have 1 of it in your deck. That's something you have to consider. Do you want to put 2 Earth Spirits in that deck? Or if Tsunami, do you want to play 2 Tsunami and only put 1 Water Spirit in your Spirit deck? or do you want to play 3 and then you would bump it up to 2? Usually, I would say it's about 2/3 of like the usable spirit or the spirit cost of all the spirits that you have, or all of the cards that you have that are under that cost as the spirit math. It gets a little bit complicated. Um, Try and look at some of the ratios that other people have had, um, just to kind of get a sense for it. But usually I go with kind of like 2/3 whatever amount I'm doing there. And be careful of band limits. I mentioned Earthquake just a second ago. Um, there's not that many bans, there's not that many limits right now, but it is something to keep in mind, especially when it comes to your spirit deck and how you want to play your deck. Um, you may be able to splash the 2 earthquake in, or the 2 earth spirits for the earthquake in there, or the 2 fire spirits in for a lava but it might not always be the right option, right? So just be careful of those and don't include more than what's in there. If you look at some old deck lists, they may have that. So just be careful when you're looking at when those deck lists are from. And lastly, step 3, how do I know if it's right? How do I know if my deck that I've just built is good? Um, First thing that I always do is ask for feedback. I will always talk to people whenever I build a deck and say, hey, what do you think of this? What do you think of this deck that I have now made? And people are pretty willing to help if you go to the Discord, um, or anywhere else where you can talk to people. They'll pretty much give some pretty good feedback on what you're able to play with, and what you should cut, what you should um, add more of, or what tech cards you might consider in your deck. Um, so yeah, and then testing. Um, Best way to find out if your deck is good is to use it. Um, Practice playing the deck, learning all of the different things that you can do with the deck, and then practice against a bunch of different decks, right? If you're just playing against some random deck, you may find out, oh, this deck is really good against that deck or really bad against that deck, and that might skew your opinion. So you have to have a good wide variety. Play against the top decks, play against the bottom of the barrel decks. Just find out kind of where it places itself, and that way you kind of know what it's good against. And that can even advise, how you play against those decks in the future. If you build a side deck, how to side cards in and out. Um, and yeah, and then adapt from there. If you see that, oh, I'm drawing too many Elestrals, maybe cut the Elestral count down. Or if you're drawing too many defensive cards, right? You've built a deck that is like a control deck, but you don't really have a way to fully get through at the end. All of your cards just have really low attack and you just got really big defense, and you're not able to carry through with the final kill. Maybe include some more attack heavy cards in there just to try and balance it out. That way you have that kind of victory. Just learning and adapting. And then lastly, tournaments. What better way than to play against really good people? There are the 2 types of tournaments. There's the casual tournaments that you can always do through the webcam. Those are on Tuesday nights. Those will be really, really good if you just want to test your deck a little bit. And then there's the premiere events, also through the webcam. The next one's on December 1st, and I know that MBT is now doing his own tournament series. I think that first one is on November 30th. So just look out for big tournaments, and if your deck does well, it's good to know. And if you end up doing well and then losing later, finding out what you lost to, or if your deck does terribly, you kind of know, oh, this is what went wrong, and just trying to analyze that. And that's always the best idea in my opinion. So that's it for right now. We hopefully have learned to build a deck properly. Um, I might go through in the future and try to build a deck with you using some of these steps, um, and just, yeah, figure out how to build a deck. I hope you all were able to learn something. If you liked the video, like and subscribe. I've got more video ideas in the future. I apologize for the infrequent uploads. Very busy, so I've got to kind of manage it. But I do love making videos. I know I did a video with Soren Plays that should be out on December 4th. Um, and I will probably have maybe a live stream or do some videos on the upcoming tournaments as well. So, yeah, if you like the video, make sure to like and subscribe, and thank you very much. See you next time.